Welcome. I'm Sheriff Kieran Donahue, Canyon County Sheriff, and welcome you to the 13th Annual Canyon County Law Enforcement Memorial. Could I ask the Honor Guard to present the colors? Please stand. You at ease? My name is Bill Roscoe, and I'm honored to be the chaplain for the Canyon County Sheriff's Office. It's a great privilege to be with all of you today. It's a great privilege to serve here in a small capacity with the Canyon County Sheriff, and I appreciate it, Sheriff Donahue, very much, and all of the command staff and officers. Thank you for all your support and encouragement. And now I'd ask you if you'd join me in prayer. Two Bible verses before we go to prayer. Psalm 83, verses 3 and 4, God says to us as people to give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. I know that I speak for the vast majority of citizens when I say that we sincerely appreciate the honorable work that all of you in law enforcement do. And you truly are God's instrument, giving justice to the weak and protecting the innocent from evil. And then from the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 13, God says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends." In the first 4 months of this year, 24 law enforcement officers have died in the line of duty. 2 more have died in the month of May. 16 of those deaths were the result of a criminal act. There are no words to rightly convey my thanks or our thanks to all of you who wear the badge, but I promise you that every day I will ask God to bless you and protect you and your families, and to keep you and them living in His perfect peace. Now, if you would join me in prayer. Almighty and gracious God, we ask your blessing on this time as we honor our fallen law enforcement officers. As we remember them and their courageous service, we ask you to bless their families, fellow officers, and loved ones with your peace and with hope. Thank you, Lord, for each of these who lived to protect and serve, and who loved others more than they loved their own life. Father God, we ask you to bless and protect all those who serve today. Please give them the courage, strength, and wisdom that they need as they willingly place themselves between evil and the innocent. Protect them by your mighty power, Lord, and send your angels to guard their backs. Bless their homes, their families with your peace, your joy, and the comfort of your love at the end of each day. And we ask all of these things in the name that is above all others. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light. What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please take your seats. Thank you to the Honor Guard for presenting the colors and Caroline Watts playing the bagpipes. I want to welcome our dignitaries on the stage. The three speakers I'll get to in just a moment, but I would make sure I represent and recognize my co-chair for this event, 13 years now, our chaplain, Reverend Bill Roscoe. Thank you, Bill, for all that you do. Appreciate it. I'd like to welcome our Board of County Commissioners here today. Thank you for what you do, for providing us this facility and providing this atmosphere to allow us to give reverence to those that we are going to speak of today. So thank you for being here. Mayor Kling, thank you for being here, and you and your staff for making the time to come here. We greatly appreciate it. And I know there's some other dignitaries, I think, Senator Crapo's office, Senator Risch's office here today as well. Thank you for representing the good senators. They are away at Washington. I just left them yesterday, thank goodness, so good for them for being there. This is a very solemn time, not just today, not just because it's Police Week nationwide where these memorials are held, but it's a very delicate time in our nation and our nation's history. And why do we celebrate today? Why do we come here? And I say celebrate because we celebrate those who are here giving honor to those who have fallen, and that we celebrate the fact that we can join together in a country and give this reverence to those who so greatly deserve it, and that we can give reverence to the fact that we are in a free nation. And I think it's a moment for all of us to take a pause to reflect and remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Some of those we knew, some of those we did not know, but they gave the ultimate sacrifice by enforcing the rule of law. The rule of law that gives us the ability to be a free nation, to be safe in our homes, to be safe at our jobs, and from a law enforcement standpoint, to protect the people that we serve. Law enforcement is a calling. It's a calling by God and no one else. Every man and woman who wears the uniform, who carries a gun, who wears a badge is called to that service. Some do not know that early on. Some do know it very early on. But all of us are joined in that. However, when I think about that, it's a calling not just to serve God, it's a calling bigger than ourselves, to be a part of something that's bigger than each and one of us, that we set ourselves aside so that we can serve others. And we're giving that opportunity to do so, not because we deserve it, because God said this is what we're going to do. This is what you're going to do. However, those of us who are called, and we're so grateful that we are, we do not do so alone. It is our families that take that shift with us every day and night. It's our families that make the sacrifice as well. They make the sacrifice so that we can do what we do, that we are called upon to do, to serve. The names that we'll read today, the names that we celebrated in Washington, D.C. just a short few days ago, are those who have fallen. But there are those who are left behind. The wives and husbands, the sons and daughters, the brothers and sisters, the moms and dads, they too sacrificed. And unfortunately for them, that sacrifice goes on forever. It doesn't end with the service. It doesn't end with the commendations. It means they go on without the person that stood that watch for us. Nationally and locally, we take the time to remember and to celebrate at Police Week in Washington, D.C. While I was in Washington this week, and I had the privilege to go there to represent Idaho, to represent Canyon County, and to represent the National Sheriff's Association as the president of this great association. I just returned yesterday, as I said, and I was able to attend some very important memorials. The FBI memorial celebrated those men and women, two people who had died not during 9/11, but years later from 9/11. They too, they were forensic scientists, and they made the commitment to go to that scene and for weeks work there, and ultimately it took their life. I was able to go to the ATF memorial. I was able to stand beside Kash Patel, our FBI director, our United States Attorney Pam Bondi, many others, the deputy secretaries, deputy directors, who took the time not just to be there, but to honor what you men and women in uniform do. And to hear their speeches, brief, which was appropriate, but you could feel the conviction. I was also allowed and asked to read names during the police vigil on Tuesday night in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. I had the honor of standing with executives from all over this nation, including Kash Patel and others, to read the names of 345 individuals that lost their lives, whose names will be placed on that wall. Deputy Bolter, our colleague from Ada County, was among them. I had the honor of meeting with his wife and his parents at the National Sheriff's Association headquarters prior to the vigil. I don't think anything affected me as much as that meeting. All the things I did, but to stand there in my headquarters in Alexandria and talk to those people, it's very difficult. A friend of mine, whose last day with the FBI was Tuesday, Deputy Director Robert Conti, stepping down from the Deputy Director's position that he's held for many years to care for his father, who's ailing. But he talked of an anecdote about a woman that he knew, that he heard speak some time past, whose husband had been lost in the line of duty. And she said, and I paraphrase, I believe I got the quote right, "The best sound that I hear at night after his shift is the sound of Velcro. It tells me he got home." And that's what your families endure. I thought that was very telling coming from Robert, who serves as the chief of police for Washington, D.C. It's a big job. He's a great man. I was honored on Wednesday to be invited to the Vice President's house for breakfast. The only sheriff in this nation as president, but I sat with the Vice President, J.D. Vance, in his house, the Naval Observatory House, and we visited, and I was so moved that I would be from a place where we sit today to be sitting with the Vice President. 2 weeks after I was the privilege of standing in the Oval Office with our President at his invitation. Those things will be embedded in my memory forever. But what embeds in me is the fact that those men, on Wednesday afternoon, following that meeting, sitting down with AG General Bondi for an hour and a half in the Eisenhower building, discussing what you all face every day in law enforcement. What do we need to address? But those men and that lady, their commitment to law enforcement is unequaled in this country. It's immeasurable. And you don't have to sit there and talk with them to know that. They're telling you that every day on the television. Such a contrast to where we've been the last 4 years, and I was not shy about telling them that for years law enforcement's been abandoned, but not anymore. They've got your back, and they're here with you, and they're standing with us, and they're addressing the risks that you people in uniform take every day. I believe that today, as we mark the end of Police Week nationally, I think where you are today is exactly where you should be. I think that every single law enforcement officer should take time to pause. Executive law enforcement officers should take time to pause and be where you are today. There's nothing more important than to give reverence and remembrance to those of them who have died in the line of duty, to share in the fellowship, and to recommit as law enforcement executives to bring our people home every day and night. Because we've all been out in those streets and we know what it takes. So before I introduce my speakers, I want to shout out to the dispatchers of all of our nation who are taking those calls from our men and women every day and night, 24/7, manning that shift, knowing that they are our link to get home. We need them. We need them there. I spoke to the Vice President over breakfast 2 days ago, and I said, "Sir, I'm asking you to delve into Congress and encourage them to pass the Helper Act. It's sat there for 3 years. We need our senators and our representatives to pass the Helper Act, which gives lower percentage loans to law enforcement and our first responders, such as firemen, our partners, EMS, but especially law enforcement, so they're not living in camp trailers while they do this job, risking their lives every day." And I called upon the Vice President to do so, to intervene, to give us that assistance, because that's what we need to do. We need to stand with them. And further, I want to thank our media partners here today too, especially Channel 7, KTVB. They are here today live streaming this event, and I graciously appreciate the fact that they would take the time to do so on such an important day. So thank you to KTVB and all of that team. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers. But before I do, I have to introduce my beautiful and lovely wife, the First Lady, of the National Sheriff Association's Jeannie Donahue. Thank you, dear, for allowing me to do all that I do on behalf of the people of this nation. I could not do it without you and your support and our children, so thank you for always being there to nudge me along the way and pull me back from the abyss. Sometimes you miss the handhold, but I do it anyway. So, thank you. Our first speaker is a longtime friend of ours, longtime friend of mine. He's been, when we were younger people, I was still old at the time, but Lieutenant Colonel Russ Wheatley has served in Idaho law enforcement since 1993, beginning with the Bannock County Sheriff's Office and joined the Idaho State Police in 1999. His career includes assignments as a trooper, detective, SWAT operator, and key leadership roles in narcotics enforcement, homeland security, and state operations. He has served on the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force and led the Idaho Fusion Center. In September of 2024, he was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, now serves as Idaho State Police Chief of Staff. Lieutenant Colonel Wheatley holds a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's in Homeland Security and Defense. A graduate of the FBI National Academy and other advanced leadership programs, he is widely respected for his unwavering commitment to public safety, professional excellence, and dedicated service to Idaho communities. I give to you Lieutenant Colonel Russ Wheatley. Colonel.
First of all, I want to thank Sheriff Donahue. I've always appreciated working with Sheriff Donahue. Like he stated, we've known each other for a long time, both as dope cops doing stuff on the street, chasing potential homicide suspects, etc. So I've always really appreciated working with you, Sheriff, and thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I've attended a lot of these ceremonies over my career. I've never had the privilege to be a speaker at one, so I'm very, very honored to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellow officers, deputies, troopers, family members, and friends. It is an honor to stand before you today to pay tribute to the brave men and women of Idaho law enforcement who made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. These memorial events are awe-inspiring to me and show the connectivity of the greater law enforcement family. There are so many people here whom I've spent my career working alongside. All of you have helped shape me into the person I am today. These events humble me and should remind us all of the oath that we took to protect and serve. It has been said that behind every badge is a person, and behind every person is a family. I can tell you this is true for my family from two perspectives, as my father was also a police officer. Reflecting on my youth, I don't remember being worried about whether my dad would come home after his shifts. That may have been because I was sleeping, because he mostly liked to work the midnight shift. But on days that he did work, my interactions with him generally revolved around him running me to school in the morning rather than making me ride the bus. I reflect on those small interactions, and they meant a lot to me. However, I do remember my dad being absent from several events and holidays where most of my friends' families would spend time together. So that was an impact, I feel like, from my being a young person. Although we missed events, I remember being so proud of him and the fact that he was a police officer and that he was one of the good guys. I think that's one of the things that all of our families feel like with us, is that they are proud of us for being into this profession and for doing the right thing. One day when I was in junior high, I remember being told that my dad had been hurt in a car crash. Eventually, I was told that his patrol car had been T-boned in an intersection while running code to a call. As you can imagine, as a young teenager, I had no idea what was going to happen to my dad. This is the first time I can really remember being worried about my dad's well-being. The crash really hurt him. He had a knee that was badly broken that required surgery. Based on the surgery, he then got a staph infection. This led our family to really worry about whether he was going to be able to keep his leg or not. The antibiotics the doctors were giving him to help cure the infection were causing tons of other issues within my father's body. After several days and weeks of worry, my dad finally got ahead of the infection and was released from the hospital to rehab. He was eventually able to return to work at full duty. Although my experience pales in comparison to losing a family member of those that we're honoring today, this experience really provided me with the insight of what the initial emotions of not knowing what is happening with one of your loved ones was like. Our family and the greater law enforcement community rallied around my father, and I will never forget that. My dad's service to our community has been a great example to me and led me to also want to serve as a police officer. I know my career has similarly impacted my family, but based on my childhood experiences, I've done all I could to ensure that I was present at events for my family and for my children as much as possible. Additionally, I think over the years as a whole, law enforcement has done a much better job in providing a little bit better work-life balance for our employees, which is really, really important and something I think that was missed over the years. I know families who have lost their loved ones are proud of their family members too. The Law Enforcement Memorial reminds me of the bond law enforcement officers have with each other. Although I have never known any of our fallen officers in Idaho personally, I feel a bond with them. I think the closest thing I had is when I worked at the Bannock County Sheriff's Office. Canine Kai was shot and killed during an operation. Deputy Andy Thomas was the handler for Kai, and I remember the grief that swept through our agency for a canine, so I can only imagine for an officer how that feels for an agency. This memorial allows us to remember our fallen. Their memory is not only a tribute to their bravery, but also a testament to the strength of their families. I'm going to tell a personal story. In 2019, I attended the FBI National Academy. I had the opportunity to go back there and attend the academy, which was an awesome event, and there's many in this room that I know that have attended that as well. For those that don't know, the FBI National Academy is a 10-week program over in Quantico, Virginia, where the FBI provides law enforcement training to law enforcement leaders from across the world. I mean, there were people from tons of countries in my class. One of the events that the National Academy students have an opportunity to participate in is a tour of the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. that the sheriff just spoke of. This memorial is beautiful, and it contains over 24,000 names of fallen officers from around the United States. This tour is very patriotic, include laythreeing by our class. Additionally, students were given an opportunity to read names of the fallen officers on the memorial. I chose to participate in that event knowing that it was going to be a real solemn time. And I chose to recognize Idaho State Police Trooper Linda Huff, who was killed in the line of duty on June 17, 1998. This experience allowed me to honor one of the Idaho State Police's fallen, and I still remember how proud I felt reading her name to a group of strangers that were classmates of mine at the academy. At Deputy Bolter's funeral last year, I remember being so impressed by his family as they and the community paid tribute to him. It appeared to me that their faith provided their family with tremendous resilience in a situation that is the worst imaginable. Their positive outlook and message inspired me. In closing, I want to remind everyone again that behind every badge is a person, and behind every person is a family, an essential part of the story of sacrifice and service. A family's love, support, and resilience empower officers to serve and with courage and dedication. May God bless the families of our fallen officers, their memories, and all who serve with courage and love. Thank you.
It seems that Sheriff Donahue at the mic, I always make mistakes, so just to make sure people know we're all human. I saw Mayor Jerem Wagner in here somewhere, but now I don't spot him, but I know he's here. Mayor, I apologize for not recognizing you sooner. We are going to have a special group of people present to you here in a few moments. I have not forgotten you all, nor you, Deputy Anderson, but I would rather make that introduction in just a moment. So, thank you. Our next speaker is another longtime friend, a very, very renowned and very well-known person from right here in Nampa, Idaho area. Joan Endicott is a speaker, coach, and author of I Get To, The Power of Perspective, a book and trademarked message endorsed by leadership icons including Clint Backard, Les Brown, and Stephen Covey. Overcoming a childhood of neglect and abuse, Joan turned her pain into her passion and purpose, helping others own their God-given worth and live into their highest calling. Her giant slayer coaching helps individuals choose courage over compromise and finally be free to embrace a David mentality in a Goliath world. Her messages and coaching have encouraged and equipped individuals in over 30 countries. So she's received various recognitions. Joan says her greatest honor is being a wife to Mark for nearly 45 years, first college sweethearts, then partners in marriage, life and business, and best of all, best friends. They have 3 grown children and 3 granddaughters who call them Gigi and Papa. Joan and Mark were awarded the title of Marriage Ambassadors by Healthy Family Networks, and together their mission is to strengthen, encourage, and comfort fellow sojourners. It's with great honor I reached out to Joan to ask her to join us here today. And she's done a lot. She does a lot for others more than herself. So it's a real pleasure to introduce you, Joan Endicott. Joan, thank you for being here.
One of the challenges of speaking at something like this is it's so touching and it means so much. And so, Sheriff, thank you for the opportunity and the honor. And Jeannie, his better half, as he so rightly calls her, they are the real deal. I've known them for many years, since our children were in school together, and they are who they say they are, and they are authentic people of character and desire to help others at any time, anywhere, in any way. Reverend Billy Graham said, "Courage is contagious. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened." I love that quote. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened. Those who we are honoring today, they helped stiffen the spines of all of us, of all of you who are serving today. They chose to step out in courage and in compassion to do what they did and laid that foundation. And without them, things wouldn't be as they are. We wouldn't have the safety for our families and our community. And I can tell you, as a Gigi of 3 little girls, nothing is more important to me. Nothing. We're so blessed and honored to be able to talk about those who have demonstrated the courage and inspiring many of you who serve today. They built that legacy of a foundation. Also, we get to acknowledge grief, because as Sheriff talked about, those who have lost someone are still in that place of grief. Grief, it's been said, is love with nowhere to go. And we all grieve with you, and for those of you who've lost someone, whether in the line of duty or not, grief is a companion that none of us ever want, but we all end up having at some point. And so I want to say from myself, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your grief. And I also want to say I'm sorry for people who don't appreciate you. I think that's one of the biggest crimes, is not appreciating people who do what you do every day. And so I want to thank you, even from the little 7-year-old girl in me who was so frightened coming back to her little apartment, seeing the police cars and the lights, and had been called because of domestic violence in my own family. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Because you protect people from others, but you also sometimes protect people from themselves. People who are addicted, people who are doing things that they are not in their right mind. So thank you for those who forget to say thank you, or don't know to, or aren't able to. Crisis creates clarity. As Sheriff mentioned, September 11th, how people still are having the effects of that. And after September 11th, the month after, a few weeks after, you all showed up in a place that I was, that someone I loved needed you. Weeks after September 11th, a friend of mine, Lori, who was like a little sister to me, she had had a broken and painful past, much more severe than mine. And she was at my home helping me with some things. And then as she was taking off, I told her how proud of her I was, because she'd had a really tough year, very tough year. Her husband had left her and her boys for someone else. And so she had struggled so tremendously. And so I gave her a hug before she got into her old yet very appreciated family van and said, I love you. And as she waved through the window as she took off and said, I love you back. 20 minutes later, I heard the loud sound of a helicopter. It is customary for me now to pray for those giving and receiving help, whether I know what's happening or not, because we know if we see a rescue vehicle, somebody's life just changed. So I heard a chopper, but I had no idea what it was. I went out on my deck, and I looked over, and they were just shutting the door on a life flight helicopter. So I'm saying these prayers, and as I go back in the house, I feel the nudge, the urge to walk down to the corner. And as I'm walking down, I see all the rescue vehicles, the police, the fire department, or the fire trucks, the ambulance. As I get closer, I see that there was a loaded garbage truck that had skidded for several yards, and I get closer, and you know, as I'm praying for whoever's here, and I see Lori's van that had been T-boned by the garbage truck. The police officer standing right there, I said, where's the woman who was in the van? And he pointed to the chopper, which was now almost out of sight. And I said, she's going to be okay, right? He said, I'm sorry, I don't know. And then he told me it would be taking her to St. Alphonsus, and that it looked pretty bad. I can't imagine that scene that day without you being there, without you bringing order into chaos, without you being there saying, okay, this is what we need here, this is what we need there, and doing what you do. You gave Lori the best chance anyone could have. You gave her the best chance. Now, I will say, this is not a side note, because I am a huge advocate of wearing a seatbelt and driving safely and putting your damn distractions in the trunk. If you can't control that phone or whatever else is distracting you, put it in the trunk till you get there. Like, I'm a huge advocate. I will carry that flag with you against distracted driving and also wearing your seatbelt. That particular day, Lori didn't. She didn't have her seatbelt on. So she was ping-ponged in that van, and the police officer, you know, one of them later said, that was like a freight train hit that van. It was her fault. It was her fault. The man, bless his heart, the man in the garbage truck said, she looked both ways and took off, and it was right in front of her. I found out later she was under an influence of some kind I didn't know about. So she was completely distracted and should not be behind a wheel. weeks after her accident, the doctor came in and said, "I'm sorry to tell you this. This is as good as Lori will ever get." And I thought, there is nothing good about this. She's got 4 kids. She's only 32 years old. She was on her way to pick up her 3-year-old when she left my home. The next morning, I was waking up with additional grief, saying, "God, why is this happening? Like, why isn't she going to be better?" She couldn't do anything for herself, much less those she loved. And I lay there thinking about all the things I had to do. I have to get up, I have to get my kids up, I have to get their breakfast made, get their lunches made, get them off to school, and then start this whole huge list of things for work. I don't want to do any of it. I just want to pull the covers over my head and let the world go into a holding pattern, because the grief was so big and the shock was still so real from the doctor's words. And then something simple and miraculous happened. God allowed me to picture Lori lying up in her hospital bed, unable to do one thing for those she cared about. And across my have to list was, I get to get out of my bed. I get to go use the restroom by myself. I get to serve people. I get to show up in the way God's calling me to show up. I am so blessed. If Lori could have got out of her bed, run down her hall, scooped up her babies just to tell them one more time how much she loved them, she would have done it with sheer gratitude. In fact, she would have taken every one of our lists and taken it and said, "I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it," because she would have been so grateful. And I have people saying to me, "I want to be more grateful, Joan. How do I do that?" It's simpler than we make it, friends. What matters most to you? Think of 1 or 2 things that matter most to you right now. Now imagine not having them. It immediately rises our level of gratitude. If we think about not having them, what we don't want to do is wait until someone is gone before we appreciate them. We want to fully be grateful, be gratefully present with what is. And the fact that you're able to do what you do, wow. You get to do it because you get to show up for those little girls like me who are in a place that they are frightened and don't know who to trust. You're the helpers, as so many people refer to you. You're the helpers. You're the rescuers. You're the ones who show up when we need somebody to show up. And by the way, please, you can't go through what you do and not need help also. Please be quick to ask for help before you even think you need it. Please surround yourself with people who are speaking life and love and giving you tools and giving you what you need every day. Because we cannot function without you. You are our heroes. I'm so grateful for you all, that you stand guard, like that gentleman on the corner that day, standing guard, directing traffic, doing what he does, what each of you do every day. I had an idea, Sheriff. I'm just going to mention that right now. I think it'd be really cool to have a sheriff's prayer posse that every shift and every person is covered in prayer. We can talk about that, Reverend Roscoe. Anyway, God bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and give you his peace.
Thank you, Joe. You obviously bring up many things, and one of those things is the unfortunate and sheer fact that domestic violence is so rampant in our country. And I'm sorry for what you went through. I'm sorry for what all people go through with that. But I'm also keenly aware of how many officers die in the line of duty going to domestic violence, domestic abuse calls. And we can never forget that, and we should all pledge to do more. so that we not only do we save those victims who are victims forever, we save the officers who are just there to help. I changed things up a little bit this year without telling my assistant, my executive assistant, Bunny. Thank you for all the work you do each and every day, and especially for this. And thank you to our committee. They are a countless number of people from the Sheriff's Office, Caldwell PD, and others that put this on for you all. And they make it this beautiful. And all of our sheriffs, Sheriff of Hawaii County, of course, is here, and our executive officers and representatives from our police municipalities. Thank you for sending your personnel. I have a deputy in the back. He's a school resource officer, Valley View High School. He's an outstanding individual. He's an outstanding deputy, and he cares deeply about what happens in his community and throughout this nation. And he has been generous enough to bring with him today some musical performers from the Valley View Choir. I know we still have one speaker left, and I'm doing this on purpose because sometimes I think we need a little bit of break between the speakers. And as I sat there and listened, it encouraged me to follow this path that I didn't tell them about. So today we have, again, the Valley View Middle School Choir, led by Erica Griffiths, teacher. And at this time, I would ask you all to come forward and to sing your, I believe, 2 songs, right, Bunny? Deputy Anderson, if you would lead them up, thank you. Wow, thank you. Thank you for bringing such great talent to our event today. As an Irishman, certainly love both songs. Yeah, it made me lose my place, actually. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much. We have gifts for our choir as well as when you leave here, but we're not done. Joan said a couple things that I think are very important too, that there's a lot of law enforcement officers that we all know that did not die in the line of duty but are passed away just the same. And they too made sacrifices to do just like the men and women that you see among you today and those who are out on the streets today. So I just want to make sure that we remember them in our prayers and in our hearts. And then as I introduce our next speaker, who's also a very good friend of ours, good friend of mine, who has stood in the trenches for many, many, many years. But Joan, you gave a quote, and John Wayne, another very famous cowboy, probably Irish, I can't remember. Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway. Good Lord, we know what that means. Mr. Justin Watcott, our acting United States Attorney for the District of Idaho, was appointed acting United States Attorney for the District on February 14, 2025. A lifelong Idaho prosecutor, he has over 25 years of experience, including service as First Assistant United States Attorney, Criminal Chief, and Assistant United States Attorney. He has prosecuted major state and federal cases involving violent crime, white-collar fraud, and organized crime, and has received national recognition for his work. Mr. Watcott is also a respected legal educator and frequent lecturer on digital evidence, trial advocacy, and prosecutorial ethics. Mr. Watcott is a lifelong Idaho resident and a graduate of Post Falls High School, the University of Idaho, and the University of Idaho School of Law. Please welcome Justin Watcott.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be here today and to participate in this ceremony, this important ceremony to recognize on Idaho's fallen law enforcement officers. I have to be honest, as I listened to the choir sing those beautiful songs, I thought, how do I follow that? I've been, frankly, quite a bit nervous about speaking to you today because even though I speak publicly for a living, I don't know that I've ever spoke on a topic as important as this, and really to an audience as important as this to me. And one of the reasons I was a little uncertain about it is I've never worn the badge. I've never put on that uniform and gone out on the streets and upheld the rule of law in the way that each of you sitting here today wearing that uniform have. But I can tell you that I've been extremely fortunate during my career to work very closely with law enforcement, to be partners with law enforcement across this entire state. And I've been so inspired by the dedication to public service that you show. And that's what I want to talk to you about here a little bit today, is that word service. Serving others is selfless. It's righteous. And it's something that we're all called to do. But serving one's community by putting your life on the line each and every day, that's heroic. As the quote on the National Law Enforcement Memorial states, it is not how these officers died that makes them heroes. It's how they lived. They dedicated their lives and ultimately sacrificed their lives in the service of others. And their lives and their service and their sacrifice will be forever remembered by the grateful citizens of this state. And honoring them through ceremonies like this, ceremonies of remembrance, is important not only for the families of the law enforcement officers that have fallen, and not only for those of you that serve as law enforcement, but for all of us citizens that benefit every single day from the service and protection of law enforcement. Now, as I said, I haven't been a law enforcement officer before, but I was very fortunate early in my career to have an experience with law enforcement that really set me up, I think, to have an important perspective and appreciation of the nature of the risk that law enforcement officers take on every day. I started as a prosecutor a little over 25 years ago in the Latah County Prosecutor's Office in Moscow as an extern. And about 2 weeks into my service there, a local Idaho State Police trooper, a man by the name of Brad Doty, some of you may know him, he offered to let me go on a ride-along with him. Now, this was an incredible experience for me. Okay, I had studied criminal justice in undergrad. All through law school, I knew that I wanted to be a prosecutor, but I had never had the opportunity to go out and actually be a part of law enforcement, and I was so excited. And I remember getting into that ISP trooper car. I'd never been in a police car before, fortunately, but it was very exciting to get into that passenger seat with Trooper Doty and go out on the road on his patrol. And you know, that excitement pretty quickly turned to a significant level of anxiety with that first traffic stop. And I remember watching Trooper Doty go up to the door of the vehicle that he had stopped, and the uncertainty of what might happen struck me. I didn't know what was going to happen when he approached that window, what was going to happen with the person that was behind the wheel. I didn't know who they were. Now, I'm sure it was a fairly routine patrol and a fairly routine stop for Trooper Doty. He gave a couple of warnings. I think he wrote a couple of citations that night. Nothing really out of the ordinary, but for me, it was a first-hand view into the courage that it took to put on the badge and get in that car and go out into the community. And you know, over the course of the last 25 years, I've worked with law enforcement officers on cases ranging from speeding tickets all the way up to capital murders. And I've been fortunate to have those law enforcement officers become my colleagues, my partners, and my friends. But I've always recognized, like I did during that first night, that ride along with Trooper Doty, that the job of a law enforcement officer is not only uniquely important, but it's very, very different in the nature of the sacrifice and the risk from any other profession. I was fortunate to get the opportunity to attend Deputy Bolter's memorial last year. Obviously not a place that any of us wanted to be, but I was honored to go and attend that. I still feel the effects of that, and I gotta be honest with you, that was the first time I've ever attended a law enforcement funeral, and it was very difficult for me going in knowing how sad it was gonna be that a law enforcement officer had passed in the line of duty. And I remember feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety about it. And watching his family come in on the procession, just how difficult that was. And being in the Idaho Center as that started, that ceremony started, something came over me. And it wasn't just the sadness of that event, it was the inspiration. Because I looked out on that floor and I saw hundreds upon hundreds of men and women in uniform. And what really struck me about that experience is it wasn't just law enforcement officers here in the Treasure Valley. It wasn't even just law enforcement officers in the state of Idaho. It was law enforcement officers from across the nation. And that speaks to the brotherhood and the support of this profession. But I think it also speaks to an acknowledgement of what you put on the line every day. And only you that do that know, but those of us that don't recognize and appreciate it. And I really can't thank Sheriff Donahue enough for giving me the opportunity to speak those names in this ceremony today. And I will tell you that their courage, their dedication, their willingness to make personal sacrifices in the name of public service and community safety, it's always been awe-inspiring to me, and it remains so today. And I want to echo what Sheriff Donahue recently said, which is we must also recognize that it's not just the officers that sacrifice, it is their loved ones that make that sacrifice for the public good as well, their spouses, their friends, their families. So as we end National Police Week, I call upon all Idahoans to recognize the service and sacrifice of our law enforcement officers, not only in ceremonies like this, and not only for 1 week out of the year, but every single day. Because their dedication to upholding the law through their service is truly the foundation of the protection of our citizens' life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for these officers that have made the ultimate sacrifice, we as citizens of this state are forever indebted in gratitude. And for those officers who put the badge on every day in the name of public service, your community thanks you. We appreciate you. And we recognize that it is because of you that we live in the best state in this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. As you can see, our speakers have lived many, many lives, if you will, and experiences, and I'm so honored that they would all join us here today. Thank you again from me to share your thoughts, your experiences, and to help us have guidance as we move forward. Before we read the names of the fallen, it's a very solemn part of this ceremony today, and those of you who have not attended and those who have. I do want to thank our sponsors. You'll see their names throughout on the TV screens above you. We could not do that without them, and especially the Fort Idaho Center, Walmart, Starbucks, and of course Host Bloom, Boise Rescue Mission, Canyon County, Norco. The list goes on, but especially our staff and our associations within the Sheriff's Office who just give tirelessly. Even though they may be on a shift, they're here, they're helping, they're prepping for this, so thank you so much. And before I ask the executive officers and representatives to join me on the floor with Lieutenant Colonel Wheatley, as our other two speakers will read the names, I do want to mention that Idaho's fallen canine officers are our loyal partners, their loyal partners. And let me read those to you in memory of Riddick, Nampa Police Department, 9/21/2024. Jardo, Boise Police Department, 11/16/2016. Roscoe, Emmett Police Department, 7/1/2016. Rick, Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, 6/5/2002. And Kai, Bannock County Sheriff, Office 335-1994. So important that we recognize that those faithful canines also made the ultimate sacrifice. And with that, I will ask Joan and Justin to come to the microphone. I will ask our executive officers to please take your places at the rose tables while we ask our speakers to give the roll call. Want to join that side?
Tobin Bolter, 2024.
Wyatt Christopher Mazer, 2020.
Kent Donald Swanson, 2018.
Gregory K. Moore, 2015.
Joshua Eggleston, 2009.
Monty Leroy Matthews, 2009.
Lee S. Newbill, 2007.
Christopher John Hensley, 2003.
William J. Mann, 2002.
Scott W. Palmer, 2001.
James Brian Molson, 2001.
Philip Charles Anderson, 2001.
Linda Carol Huff, 1998.
Mark Arlen Stahl, 1997.
Dennis L. Remington, 1995.
Ronald W. Feldner, 1994.
William F. Deegan, 1992.
John T. Houston, 1989.
James Donald Miller, 1989.
Brent Jacobson, 1989.
James E. Simono, 1985.
William H. Pogue, 1981.
Wilson Conley Elms, 1981.
Douglas M. Dean, 1979.
E. C. Chuck Ashton, 1976.
Samuel B. Buntrock, 1974.
Howard M. Schaefer, 1972.
Ross D. Flavel, 1972.
William J. Philpott, 1971.
Edward E. Davis, 1971.
Ralph T. Russell, 1970.
Walter W. Cox, 1970.
Vernal E. Keller, 1969.
Morley H. Cannon, 1969.
John H. Combs, 1969.
Bill H. Miller, 1968.
Vern M. Royce, 1968.
James A. Walker, 1966.
Stanley L. Larson, 1967.
Daniel Platt Woodland, 1964.
James M. Alexander, 1965.
Joseph Irel Hart, 1962.
Benjamin T. Newman, 1962.
Keith Judd, 1961.
E. A. Hans Hansen, 1957.
Fred L. Peterson, 1951.
John C. Ferris, 1946.
Carl F. Sigmund, 1945.
John Glenn, 1940.
Ellsworth Arthur Teed, 1942.
F. F. Bob Hunter, 1939.
George A. Meffin, 1940.
Harry Merrill, 1938.
Craig Taylor Bracken, 1939.
Fontaine Cooper, 1935.
Henry C. Gibbons, 1935.
Thomas Russell, 1934.
Robert S. Walton, 1934.
Leonard Roth Cummings, Jr., 1928.
Hugh Nichols, 1931.
Billy Withington Jr., 1928.
Louis J. Bancroft, 1928.
Gordon A. Harris, 1924.
Nathan H. Suter, 1926.
Neil Simpkins, 1924.
Samuel G. Garbett, 1924.
Charles H. Torrance, 1921.
Harold J. Mossman, 1921.
L. J. Taylor, 1914.
J. C. Sherrod, 1918.
W. J. McFadden, 1913.
Lafayette B. Hampton, 1914.
John Henry Hayes, 1904.
Elbert Percy Sweet, 1904.
David Stoddard, 1890.
Wallace Everett Cool, 1901. V. W. Coffin, 1883.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Joan. Officers, if you'll return your seats, please. Before I ask our performer to perform taps, let me just unfortunately put even more emphasis on what we just recognized. Line of duty deaths in the United States, as was mentioned by Reverend Roscoe, January 1st through May 14th stands at 25. 1 by assault, 3 by automobile crash, 1 by blunt force trauma, 11 by gunfire, 2 by inadvertent gunfire, 2 by motorcycle crash, 2 struck by vehicle, 3 vehicular assault, and so far in 2025, 8 canines have lost their lives in line of duty. Line of duty last year, deaths was 165. In the last 5 years, line of duty deaths was 1,817 officers. In the last 10 years, 2,721 officers lost their lives in line of duty. And for all time, line of duty deaths stands at 26,962. When a police officer is killed, it's not an agency, just an agency that loses an officer. It's an entire nation. With that, I would ask for taps. Thank you, Lincoln. Lincoln Hunt is also from the Valley View Middle School. Thank you once again to all of you for joining us here today. Thank you to our incredibly dear, I won't say old friend, but we're getting there, Hal. Our dear friend Hal Colburn for the national anthem. Hal sings everywhere from junior rodeos to the PBR to incredible events like this. Thank you, sir. As we close out this portion of our event, and as I make the closing remarks, I want you to, the procession as we leave here, we'll ask our honor guard to present the colors, or retire the colors, excuse me, and then we will follow them out of this west door with the 77 balloons to release upon reaching out or bidding out by our motorcade and our American flag with the fire department. So when I ask, I'll ask for our honor guard to retire the colors, and as we leave, I'll ask my guests to follow its suit. And the choir, I would like you to join our procession following our speakers, and then representatives and executive officers, please follow with the rest of the crowd following after that. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. And Ashley Dow, Chair of the Idaho Criminal Justice Commission, thank you for what you do for law enforcement and for governance throughout this nation. Thank you. And the governor for having you in that position. Thank you for allowing me to be your vice chair. You're a pretty hard act to follow, I can tell you. We've heard from our speakers, we've took the time to remember, and what we have to continue to realize is that those who are in the positions to financially support law enforcement endeavors, whether you're the mayor, whether you're a city council member, whether you're board of county commissioners, whether you're JFAC, the Idaho legislature, it does take a lot of money. It takes a lot of resources to put our men and women out on the line to do what they do, and we greatly appreciate those of you who have that fiduciary responsibility to get us what we need to do so. We're very blessed here in Canyon County, as are in many other cities, of course, Nampa, Caldwell. So thank you. These men and women that are out there working today who couldn't be here today, as we hear Joan talk and Lieutenant Colonel Wheatley and our acting United States Attorney for the district, I'm reminded by things I also often get asked about law enforcement and how, I can't remember where it was, maybe it was I think it was with the Vice President on Wednesday, and I said, you know, these men and women see things they can't unsee. They experience things that they can't unexperience. And then they're asked to go home and turn it off and be normal. It's impossible. I had an executive officer, when I was a task force officer, say, you just can't talk about that stuff in my chain of command. I talk about that stuff then. I talk about that stuff every day to my partner, to my best friend, Jeannie. Every day. Every night. You got to get it out. And we look to our officers, to our people to go and receive and talk to somebody about counseling. We need to continue to do that. Because we're in the hardest profession that there is. We'll never unsee what we've seen. I'm confident we'll never get it all out of our minds and our systems. But we have to temper it too. Because there's those that are depending on us. And for the people out there every day and night, when they go to those calls and then they go to the next call and the next call and the next call and the next call, they have to shut out all the calls before those calls. How do you do that? I don't have the answer. I don't have it. God has it, I hope. But just remember, even those of us who are in the profession, to stop and thank those of us who are in the profession. Because without them, we wouldn't be here. Your men and women, especially you, those of you in leadership, they're what allows us to do what we do every day, is lead these agencies to make sure that our public is protected. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for the sacrifices of all that you've done and continue to do. Thank you to Bill Roscoe. He's one of the greatest friends I've ever had. I appreciate you, Bill. I have friends here from the Warhawk Air Museum, our veterans of these United States military. Thank you for being here. All of you veterans, we have many in law enforcement. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your sacrifices and what you've done. With that, I will ask the honor guard to come forward and retire the colors. And as I say, as they do so, we will follow out these doors, and then we'll ask you to join us in the release of the balloons. And then we're going to ask you to come back to this area with refreshments that we provided to visit and spend a few minutes with your colleagues and friends. With that, I'll ask the honor guard to come forward.